It's great to welcome to the program today E.J. Dionne, who is a columnist for the Washington Post, senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, and also author of Code Red: How Progressives and Moderates Can Unite to Save Our Country. So I guess the first question is unite to save the country from who or what, right?
Right. And in the first instance, it's obviously Trumpism, the attack on the rule of law that we've been seeing a lot very recently, but all through the administration, to turn away from democracy. But it's also to save the country from a radicalized right and a radicalized Republican Party. The book is obviously a very anti-Trump book, but it is also very critical of a radical right that really now dominates the Republican Party and has driven out all vestiges of both moderation and, back in the day, even some liberalism, progressivism that existed inside the Republican Party. And so I argue that in this circumstance, progressives and moderates, and we can argue about the term moderate. I'm careful in the book to say I know moderate itself is a vexed term, but we could say the center left and the left as well, that they have far more in common with each other at this moment than they have with anyone on the other side. Their differences are much smaller than their differences with the other side. And a subsidiary argument is that one of the reasons arguments inside the Democratic Party can get so fierce is that people who are on the progressive side have lost a sort of sensible interlocutor in the Republican Party, that almost all the major conversations about solving public problems take place inside the Democratic Party. So Obamacare was a program that was built in part on ideas developed by the Heritage Foundation and by Mitt Romney in Massachusetts. And this was cast as somehow socialist by the other side. And so Democrats are now having the argument that might in another era have taken place across party lines. You expand on Obamacare, or do you go to single payer? And that's the kind of argument I make in the book. But I argue to get past this moment, both of the Trump moment and of a radicalized conservatism, progressives and moderates need to be allied, because that's the only way out of this this morass we're in.
So does that presume this idea of vote for the Democratic nominee no matter who they are? Like, is that a related idea to what you are arguing?
Right. I think in this circumstance, there is pretty much no alternative to that. And it's obvious that there are, a lot of Democrats, especially after last night, who might have second thoughts about voting for Michael Bloomberg.
Well, that was going to be my exact question. Does this extend?
That's where you're going, because, and I think that will be more difficult. I mean, I think it was difficult going into that debate. I think it's even more difficult coming out of that debate. Similarly, there are people on the right end, if you will, of this broad coalition I'm describing, who have some questions about Bernie Sanders. At this moment, I think the Bloomberg question will be the harder question for an awful lot of people, both on the left and after the demolition job that Elizabeth Warren did, particularly among progressive women.
Yeah, and I've said I'm not supporting Bloomberg in the primary, but if it's November 3rd and it's Bloomberg versus Trump, I'm voting for Bloomberg. And I've pointed out, I think on Supreme Court justice selections, Bloomberg will make far better choices than what Trump has evidenced he would do. I've listed a few things, and it doesn't mean I'm any great fan of him, but I know a lot of people in my audience don't feel that way at all. And my sort of follow-on question to this is, I believe in and support what we would call a vigorous debate during the primary about which ideas should reign supreme, so to speak. But I wonder, is there a point at which it becomes self-destructive in the eventual general election?
Yeah, I'm worried about that. You may have noticed I have a column up today where, and this was it, I wrote most of it before the debate, that the kind of demolition derby that Democrats are having is leading to their ignoring, right on that stage last night, what is going on outside. It was really striking how little Trump himself was mentioned. We are really at a potential constitutional crisis here with what's going on inside the Justice Department, what has gone on with Roger Stone, how all these cases are being cherry picked on Ukraine and Russia by Barr. These are very disturbing things. It did disturb me that Democrats were spending so much time sort of settling their own differences that they didn't even get to, hey, we're all here because we need to put a stop to this. On your Bloomberg point, I think you're correct that, on court appointments, on what his budgets would look like, even his tax program is far more progressive than anything Republicans had to offer. And his support for both the climate movements and especially the gun movements is a real thing. He's made a huge difference there. I think that what we saw last night will raise questions, not only on the left, but a lot of other people saying, is he actually the strongest candidate to put against Trump? I think that was the argument he needed to make. And clearly last night on that front was a fail.
No, certainly if his making billions depended on winning debates, I don't know that he would be nearly as wealthy as he is, was my reaction. Yeah.
No.
So now, in terms of when we've seen in the past elections that are heavily based around defeating the incumbent, so John Kerry in 2004 against George W. Bush strikes me as one of those. There is often the argument made that you've really got to be voting for something as opposed to trying to remove the incumbent, that it often doesn't go well when the main message is remove the incumbent. So do you agree with that? And is that maybe something that tempers the problem of Trump not being mentioned that much yesterday, which in a way I found refreshing to just hear the candidates talk about something other than Trump?
Right. Well, I think there are two sides to this, and maybe we can take Ronald Reagan as the example. One of my arguments in the book, by the way, is that a key reason why there has been a resurgence of democratic socialism in the U.S., which, by the way, has a long American tradition, as I point out in the book. Eugene Debs got 6% of the vote. There were actually 1,200 local elected officials who were socialists back in that election. The reason why you've had a revival of democratic socialism is a reaction to the dominance of our public conversation by the Reagan economic consensus. And so the rise of democratic socialism is a reaction against that. But what did Reagan do to create that long hegemony, that long period of conservative dominance? I think there were two sides of it. I think running against an incumbent who's unpopular is actually a helpful thing politically. Jimmy Carter was unpopular. And I argue in the book for what I call the power of negative thinking, that when you looked at what Ronald Reagan built his program on, it started out as a series of negatives: anti-tax, anti-communist, anti-government. I think what pulls together this coalition are a similar set of antis, obviously anti-Trump and all the things that represents, the oppression of immigrants and refugees, a corporate corruption cast as populism, a whole disrespect for women, a whole series of things, but also a backlash against a Republican Party that has simply given up on public problem solving, on using government to redress inequality, to provide health insurance, a whole series of areas where they propose simply retreating, cutting taxes, relying entirely on the public sector. But out of that negative comes a series of positives. And if I can just pick three quick issues that are really Bernie issues that raise real coalition building possibilities. Right now, the entire Democratic Party, the entire spectrum from center to left, now wants to provide affordable, good health insurance to every American. That's not even debated anymore. The debate is over whether we do it through a public option and building on Obamacare or go directly up to single payer. Lord, I do not think we should divide ourselves radically over the path. We can disagree, we can debate the path, but we all want to go broadly in the same direction. AOC underscored that recently. with her comments. Second one is free college. That's not so radical. We used to have it before the massive underinvestment in public education. Whether we get there in one step or many steps, and let's make sure this includes not only college, but also training for people who don't want to go to college. In the book, I quote Richard Cordray, who ran for governor of Ohio. Unfortunately, he didn't win. But I love this line. He said, you shouldn't have to go to college to join the middle class. I think we need to broaden that conversation. But that's got a lot of possibility. And lastly, the Green New Deal, which when you boil the Green New Deal down, it is saying that we need urgently to act on the climate. And we also urgently need to restructure the economy to make it fairer. And we need to do that partly to redress losses that some groups might suffer from taking bold action on the climate. I think these are all positives that grow out of all of those negatives. So I guess I am not worried that a pure anti-Trump campaign will lack a positive vision, because I think you're hearing a lot of positives in the mess of all these debates. There are actually a lot of proposals.
Well, the book, I want to make clear, is not proposing this vague idea of unity for the sake of unity, the way that we've seen criticized over the last couple of months as we've seen the Democratic primary shift. It's really a practical and a sensible perspective on what it is simply that needs to happen. The book is by E.J. Dionne. It is called Code Red: How Progressives and Moderates Can Unite to Save Our Country. EJ, so great having you on. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I hope we can do this again.